So my name is Tim Abbott. I've got a little bit over 20 years experience in building software. I started out, has anyone heard of Fermilab? It's a high energy physics laboratory right outside of Chicago. I started there working for a guy that wrote the book, The God Particle. You've heard of that book? Okay, his name's Leon Lederman, yes. So I started there as an intern. 3 summers in a row I was there. Then after that I was at NASA. And I was at NASA for almost 3 years, and then at HP. And after that I did projects for Microsoft. In 2004, for example, I worked on Microsoft.com, the redesign, okay? So I've been in the Middle East for 9 years, since 2007, okay? So the Middle East 9 years ago was, if you said something agile, it was like, what are you talking about? And just recently, you know, we've had this kind of influx of agility. So, you know, if we want to talk about agility, right? We all know that, everybody knows the Agile Manifesto, right? So with the Agile Manifesto, we got better ways of working, you know, inspecting and adapting, all of the manifesto things. Yes, okay, So when we're talking about scaling, because that's what this topic is about scaling. Okay, so when we're talking about agility, right, and when we're talking about scaling, we have to think about, are we preserving agility when we scale, right? So every organization, they'll come to you and they'll say, we want to be agile, we want to be agile, we want to be agile. But when we're talking about scaling, is what we're giving to them, the frameworks we're proposing, or the solutions we're proposing, are they reflective of agility? So the core business value of agile is to be, this is probably in Saudi Arabia, because they do a lot of drifting, okay? So it's to be able to turn on a dime for a dime. Everyone knows what a dime is? It's 10 cents in US currency, okay? So this is the core business value, to be able to turn on a dime for a dime, where it's not going to be expensive to adapt to change. So kind of the market situation in the Middle East is such that here's where the oil price was, okay? So we're talking about, you know, 60% more or more drop in oil prices. So that's the core, the energy prices, except for probably Dubai, it's the entire country's budget. In Saudi Arabia, it's 75% of the country's GDP is based on oil. Okay, so before where people were able to, you know, waste a lot of resources, now they're no longer able to. Currently, I'm working for the Ministry of Labor. Okay, I work at a place called Takamo Holdings. It's a privatized entity that's part of the Ministry of Labor. McKinsey just won $1 billion real, which is about $250 million, $250 million, contract to help the government of Saudi Arabia become more efficient. Okay, so there's this focus across all ministries and all government organizations to become more efficient. Okay, so you know, if you know anything about LeSS is really adamant on certain things. It's very different, you know, than many of the scaling frameworks, because one of the things that LeSS will tell you is that, you know, all the things that Mike was talking about with kind of the alignment and all of the issues with alignment. LeSS will tell you that as an organization, you need to change as an organization, okay? It's really, really important, because at scale, so on a Scrum team, right, if you're having a meeting and you have all of the kind of the elements of Scrum, all of the ceremonies. Now at scale, if you cannot align rapidly, if your organizational design is not reflective of alignment, then you're going to waste a lot of time just with alignment, okay? So this is what a typical organizational design looks like in most organizations, right? You've got a research and development team, a production team, marketing, human resources, technology, finance, administration, on and on and on. So when we go to an organization and we say, we want to do a LeSS adoption, okay, and we see something like this, one of the things that I've been to Camel for about 4 months. So one of the things that when we look at this, we understand that the organization, well, these are basically silos within the organization, okay? And so this organization is already built to waste a lot of energy just in coming together. And it's funny because if you ask anyone, any particular person, okay, everyone's heard of a war room, right? So whenever something is going wrong on a project, everybody comes to the war room, they get together, sit together, and then all of a sudden, things start to progress and proceed. So if that's the most efficient way of working, why are we designing the organization like this? Right? In the war room, you have a cross-functional team of experts, correct? And they come together, work together, solve the problem, and then go back to their silos. So when we're thinking about Agile at scale, we're talking about not 2 teams, not 3 teams, not 4 teams, not 6 teams. So when we're thinking at scale, for example, one of the first LeSS implementations I did was a team of about 70 people for the Ministry of 70 technical people, and then we had business and other people that were part of the overall team. So if you have to align, your organizational design has to be a lot smarter, okay? So I got this from one of the people selling scaling. This is their, I don't know if anybody knows what, this is not LeSS, okay, so please don't. So this is, you know what it is? Maybe. So this is what they're selling as part of the best practices of scaling, okay? So you have the portfolio management, the program management, and then this team here. And this is, by the way, it's not safe, so be clear. So if you look here, you've got all these teams that are directing the work of this 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 teams. Okay, so from an organizational design perspective, it's not the right solution to enable alignment, okay? So people know Craig Larman? Okay, so these are some of his laws of organizational behavior. So organizations are implicitly optimized to avoid changing the status quo, middle, first level managers in specialist positions and power structures. So in our organizations, one of the things, the first thing that happened was that when I came in and started telling them we have to change this, people started wondering, what will I do then? What about my people? What about my team? Okay, so it's very important to understand that the organizational design, the culture will follow the design. Okay, so if your organizational design is based on silos, the culture will follow. The way people behave in silos, the way the marketing team only thinks about their part of the delivery. Okay, so it's very important that when we're going into an organization, from a LeSS perspective, that we are telling them that your organization has to become optimized from a design perspective first, because the culture will follow this design. So basically, and we heard this morning from Jürgen that he kept talking about experiments. So in the two LeSS books, one of the first things you'll notice is that they're difficult to read, okay? Why? Because there are tons, over 600 experiments in the books, okay? And and for example, it will say, try to do this thing, avoid to do that thing, okay? Because when you're making a decision, you have to make a decision on structure, on how you're going to work based on evidence. You have to adopt an evidence-based management perspective. It's extremely important because these experiments will give you not the best practices, but they will give you indication as to what works and what doesn't work. Because every problem generally has some different types of solution. Okay, so another thing is that you'll notice about LeSS is that generally a lot of frameworks, like I said, they design around this alignment. So you'll see that the Scrum team is some small element of that. And there's all of this kind of alignment activity that happens, okay? Or alignment glue that happens generally. Okay, so so from a LeSS perspective, it's not a building block onto a larger organizational design. It's Scrum. LeSS is Scrum, okay? And it's minimalistic. So if you think about kind of, Dave told us that he was a RUP consultant, but if you think about one of the things that we used to see in the large frameworks is that people generally have a very difficult time scaling down, right? So if you practice any other type of framework and then you go into an organization and they say, well, do we actually need this portion? And you say, no, you need to tailor it. Everybody's heard of tailoring, right? So they will say you need to tailor it. But how can you tailor without experience? How would you know? So we want to keep it simple. The LeSS framework is very simple such that these are basic, very basic practices that we've seen over time based on experiments, based on some empirical evidence, that these are the very bare minimal, and you may need to add something here or there, for example, communities of excellence, or depending on the organization, okay? Also, there are two versions of the LeSS framework. There's LeSS, which is basically 1 to 3 teams, and then, I'm sorry, 2 to 8 teams, and then there's LeSS huge, anything over 8 teams, okay? So it's based also on these principles, okay? So one of the principles is about transparency, being transparent, having transparency built into the way the organization operates, okay? If you think about, for example, whole product focus. Now, if I asked you, okay, if online banking, if I asked you about banking software, we have an online banking, okay? We've got the software that the teller uses, and we've got an ATM. Now, from a show of hands, are those 3 separate products, or are they one product? So if they're 3 separate products, raise your hand. If you think an ATM, online banking, and the teller application. So if you think they're one product, let me see a show of hands.
How they should be or how they are currently.
So from a LeSS perspective, this is one product, okay? And these are just interfaces into the product. It's just a channel of delivery, not another product, okay? Why? Because if you think about it, they're calling the same services, right? They're calling the same backend services, the same database structure. So all of the data is basically the same, but just a different interface or channel for retrieving this, okay? So when you're thinking about a product, you have to think about from a wide perspective, okay? And why does that? Why is that? So if you think about it, generally you have it on the technology team. You might have a database team, right? If you're organized around component teams, right? You might have a backend team, some database team, some UI, UX team. Has everybody seen organizations like this? Your technology teams? So from a LeSS perspective, these teams, okay, are component teams. Now what happens in a component team? So let's say we start, so let's say if we use these as different teams, okay? And we weren't using we were all using Scrum, okay? And we're all having an individual planning meeting, right? We're all having an individual daily Scrum, right? We're all having an individual review meeting at the end of the sprint. And we're having our individual retrospective, okay? So at the end of this, you have this, during this development, you'll see teams that aren't able to complete until what we call the definition of done. They're not able to complete a complete set of features. Why? Because they're arranged by component. So the database team is working on something, the UX team is working on something else, and then you have to have this alignment when you have to talk about the integration of the components. So with LeSS, the team is organized around features, okay? So you have a complete, so you have a complete feature delivery. So you have people that have mobile and backend skills, and you don't have one person, these individual experts, okay? So for example, we always want to hire the best iOS developer, right? The best Android developer, the best, Python developer if you're using Django, for example. So we always have these individualized specialists, right? But with LeSS, you want to emphasize people learning. So for example, what generally happens during a sprint, what if we don't have any Android development in this sprint? Then what happens, right? If we don't have any iOS development. So if we're just developing services and we have no UI development. So in LeSS, the team is organized around being able to deliver a particular set of features from the front end to the mobile development. One set of features with multiple skill sets, okay? It's very, very important to understand this. So these are basically feature teams. So you have a feature team that's organized around one set of features that goes deep. They can complete one set of features in a sprint, okay? So it's customer-centric. So we don't have this idea that we have a different set of people that are meeting customers. We think about what is the business value for this particular feature, or when we're prioritizing, what is the business value? Obviously, continuous improvement towards perfection. It's based on lean thinking, systems thinking. So one of the things that people don't understand in general, that in a complex system, they generally command and then push towards a particular goal, and then they don't understand the cause and effect relationship between things, okay? So there's no understanding of the entire system as it works. Also, queuing theory. So these are the basic LeSS principles. So this is a funny thing that when we're talking in our trainers group, that this is some LeSS poetry. So Craig, he says more descaling, less scaling. So we were all contributing here to try to come up with some poetry about LeSS. But one of the things is really important is to be able to understand the thinking tools before the framework. Okay? It's extremely important. So here's the basic framework, okay? So these are Scrum Masters. So you have a Scrum Master that's spread between 2 to 3 teams, okay? You have a team that you have, obviously, the sprint planning 1, just like regular Scrum, the sprint planning 2, just like regular Scrum. The coordination, this Scrum Master here, okay, is leading 2 to 3 teams maximum. I've seen generally that 2 teams, just from what I've seen, especially in Saudi Arabia, where we work, 2 teams is generally the max that he can coach. These are feature teams, okay? So you have the same thing, a sprint retrospective, okay? And you can have what's called an overall retrospective, okay? And we do obviously product backlog refinement. We do, so we have 2 types of refinement. So they're individual team refinement. There can be multi-team refinement, okay? And then you have an overall product backlog refinement. So where I am, one of our guys is here, we have generally an overall product backlog refinement, where all of the feature areas sit together once every sprint for the entire day and go through the refinement of these features, okay? And this helps because we have a lot of overlap between the teams. Sometimes we have a lot of overlap between the requests that are coming in, the PBIs or the product backlog items. So, so this helps with the coordination between the teams, and it helps to understand what's the product, what is the actual product that we're delivering, what is the value that's being delivered. So you'll see that, I'll give an example. Before I came, they were planning a redesign for maybe 6, 7, 8 months. Within 2 weeks, we were able to, through the backlog refinement and bringing all of the teams together, we redesigned in one sprint, we completed the refinement, the redesign, and we had more registrations in 1 month after the redesign than they had in any previous month in the entire year, in the previous year, in any month in the previous year, without any marketing, and they had spent, hundreds of thousands on marketing. Okay, so this, people understanding what is the problem we're trying to solve, what is the issue, what is the customer value behind this over that. We had a lot of teams, for example, we had, business owners, they were business line owners, where they were going through and they're saying, no, but I want my features now. And this team saying, I want my features now. And then bringing everyone together behind one actual product owner, right? So if imagine Microsoft Office, right? If you have a Microsoft Office product owner, who's going to determine which particular product gets, or what's going in the release? One of the things that the McKinsey consultants, I like to laugh about it, is that our McKinsey consultants, we have what's called a fast track, okay? A fast track of items that go through one set of releases. They call it the CIU, okay? The Essential Impact Unit. So these are the fast tracked. And then we have business as usual. So one of the things we told them was that so they wanted us to deliver both of these without prioritizing one over the other. Is that clear? Okay, so they wanted to deliver both of these without prioritizing one over the other. So we knew that this would never work. Why? Because this set of business as usual items, some people want these, and this set of, what we call the CIU items, they want these. Okay, so which one goes first? Which one goes second? Which one goes third? So the product owner, and I told them before this will fail, but high-priced consultants. So we tried that as an experiment, okay, and it didn't work. So everyone, it helped with the organizational learning, so everyone would understand why this one product owner is so essential to make the decision, okay? So really, from a prioritization perspective, there's not 2 product owners, there's not 3 product owners, there's 1 product owner, okay? And that person is not responsible for organizing requirements, okay, or PBIs, but they are responsible for understanding context and being able to make decisions about priority. It's extremely important, okay? So in the LeSS structure, we organize, like we said, by customer value. all of the items in the backlog are organized by customer value, okay? They're feature teams. They're not component teams, okay? They're these feature teams that are able to deliver features from beginning to the end, okay? So we eliminate this idea of having to align between the UX team and the backend team, or between the mobile team and the backend team, right? The backend team might have written some web services that are consumed by the mobile app, right? So you don't have to coordinate that anymore. Why? Because they're all on the same team, okay? So like we said, the organizational structure has to be designed around alignment, okay? We have, for example, in our refinement, we have everyone from the various teams, even marketing, okay? And people always, they were confused. Why do you want marketing people on this team? Isn't Scrum a development process? We have business development people, right? So isn't Scrum just a development process? No, but from the team perspective, okay, for example, does anybody have to write copy on the website? If you're going to deliver every 2 weeks, do you have to write copy, right? So where's this copy going to come from? So if you take them out of the team, then you have to have another meeting to coordinate, this is the copy I want, this is how it should look, this is how it should be, right? So these various people are joining the team to absolutely deliver something that can go to production, okay? It's extremely essential. If you want to deliver something that can go to production, you have to have a clear understanding of the right definition of done, okay? So here's an example, right? Here's an example definition of done. Have you done all of these particular things? Did you do performance testing? If you have an organization that is really performance driven and it's part of your definition of done, it's not done until you've done this. Okay? It's very important to understand this. If you have, for example, certain marketing requirements, if you have release notes, it's not done until this has been done. Okay?
But you still don't deploy to production.
Say it again?
So it still doesn't have any, you haven't got a little deployed to production. So you're still not done. You're still almost done.
Yeah, we're still almost done, absolutely. So if you think of it this way, some things you may not want to deploy every 2 weeks. So unless you have a base across the various feature teams, you have a base definition of done, and then the other teams can define beyond that, okay? Their own individual done items for them. You had a question?
Yeah, this definition of done is according to one team? Or
It's according to the entire product team. So, and remember what we said is the whole product focus. So you have a base set of, you have a definition of done across all of these, okay? And then an individual team might add on top of that.
yeah, but how you will integrate? Let's suppose, okay, you have the team feature teams, okay, but you still need to integrate your code.
Good question. So how often are you integrating?
Sorry?
How often are you integrating?
Maybe every sprint?
Every sprint? Then you're going to spend a lot of time integrating. Okay. If you're allowing your developers to push code to the repository, for example, and you don't have certain, for example, if you allow your devs to add broken code, for example, to the repository, you're going to extend your integration path, okay? So for us, we integrate literally every, I don't know, probably half hour or so, or less.
The minimum is every sprint.
Yeah, I'm saying the minimum is every, but I'm saying literally when we're pushing code and fixing at the same time we're pushing. Like for example, when you're doing a pull from Git, for example, and it's broken, you fix it.
Yeah, but who is responsible for testing these integrated codes? Because every team have their own testers and
their own testers. What kind of testers?
yeah, because it's a feature team, so they have the quality people for them.
So we don't have quality people, okay? We have people doing some manual acceptance testing, but we do something called TDD, if you've heard of it. So we do a lot of TDD and ATDD. So there's acceptance, there's automated acceptance testing, there's some acceptance testing from the business that's manual, okay? And there's unit level automated tests. Excuse me?
Where it is defined in the structure, less structure you show the picture.
No, it's not defined there. So one thing I want to be clear about, so that's part of the technical excellence, part of LeSS, but LeSS is not being very prescriptive about specific practices, okay? But in general, most LeSS teams, like all the LeSS teams I've ever worked on, we define that as, have you written tests as part of the definition of done, okay? So these are aspects, these are engineering practices that are part of technical excellence that is kind of part of LeSS in order to deliver every 2 weeks, if you want to deliver every 2 weeks. But LeSS by itself, it does not make explicit prescriptions for your organization, okay? Because I'll give you a reason why. So you may be adopting LeSS and you have legacy code, okay, that doesn't have tests. So you may not want to, if you can't come to a state of done without, and without releasing, for example, with these manual testers, then over time, you'll want to add tests to this legacy code. But it's not practical to think that, in your first release, or even your second or third or fourth, that you're going to add tests to all of this legacy code, okay? So it doesn't prescribe that you have to do this, okay, in order to, be a LeSS adoption.
So you mentioned technical excellence. One of the things that I've experienced in our teams is by removing that conceptual role of tester, you haven't removed the tests, you've just put the onus, the responsibility on all the developers to ensure.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you know that you can just throw something over the wall and someone will catch it, then you're more likely to miss things. But if you know that as a developer, you're not removing the testing, you're removing this role of tester, of this, what we call a local optimization of testers. So one of the things that LeSS is really big about is about removing what's called local optimizations. And a local optimization is having one role that does one particular thing, okay? So one of the things that especially in Saudi Arabia, where there's been this historical culture of waste, okay, and lack of investment in people, okay? So LeSS, prescribes, one of the things it does is very prescriptive about is long-term teams, okay? And team learning, individual and team learning. So one of the questions in our LeSS meetup that one of the guys asked, he said, well, we only have one analytics guy, okay? So how would you solve that? This is we have one analytics guy across multiple teams, okay? So one of the things that, and you'll find that on teams you have this specialist guy somewhere, okay, and a particular technology, and he's the guy, okay? So one of the ways to solve this problem is to take them out of the actual sprint, okay, and start traveling, for example, if the team is co-located, and one of the things that I didn't mention is that a feature team should be co-located, okay? A feature team. But the entire team doesn't necessarily have to be co-located, okay? So that particular person goes with the teams and works with them and trains them, okay? So because you don't, every time you get a new technology, you do not want to keep adding people to your organization, okay? So when we need, when we get a new technology, we need to be able to cross-train the people within the organization, okay?
So is LeSS exclusive to Scrum, or can you mix and match with Kanban in the LeSS framework?
Can you mix and match with Kanban in the LeSS framework?
Kanban is the execution.
Yeah, it's not, they're not mutually exclusive like that. I mean, Kanban is just execution. But it is basically.
Well, what I mean is, other frameworks, like say, you can have some of the dev teams using Kanban, some Scrum. Can you do that with LeSS, or can you?
No. Why would you do that?
It depends. Some people have a preference, so why not?
But why would you allow an optimization preference as an organization?
It depends on what you're doing.
Okay.
In certain IT shops, they prefer to use Kanban.
Okay. Can you elaborate a bit?
Well, for example, if you're doing IT, not software development, typically it's done on Kanban.
Oh, okay. So you're doing IT services. Okay. So
Development, yeah, you can use Scrum.
okay.
But LeSS isn't really designed for that.
Yeah. It's not. LeSS is designed for large-scale development on one particular product. Okay, so it's not. I don't want people to think that it's not a silver bullet to solve an IT, a specific problem that it's not meant for. Okay.
It's not an IT method.
Yeah, exactly. Pierre. Okay, so we have 5 minutes. So let's see if there's. We can stop there. Do we have any more questions?
Yes. You show one picture before. The people are selling the scaling for scaling.
Okay.
Yeah. And the less. So what is the problem less is solving, which is over there?
So can you tell me where the control of what's happening is happening? So for example, if you have does everybody know much about portfolio management? Strategy is generally defined somewhere up here, okay? So from this perspective, you're adding layers, okay? This program has generally, in a program, you have specific project teams, okay? So you have a lot of meetings, a lot of alignment, a lot of communication that's not needed. So everyone familiar with the contract game? Okay, so if you're not, who's familiar? Can you guys come up? I just want to do just one, these two guys behind you, Dave. Okay. Craig does this sometimes, so. Okay, so right now we're going to have so the contract game is the game that's played between software development and their managers, okay? Senior managers. Okay, so I will be the customer, okay? I need one more. Can you come up? Okay. You'll be the program manager. I'm communicating with you. You'll be the project manager, and you'll be the team. Okay. So, what's the status of the project? Are you guys on schedule?
Are we on schedule?
We're kind of done, but it's not done. And like you've given us extra features. It's not quite where it's supposed to be. You can have it. I think you can have it.
Yeah, we're
Okay. So this is now as you go along in that Gantt chart. So everyone knows what a Gantt chart is, right? So as we go along, we have status meetings. That's part of the PMI framework. We have weekly status meeting, and okay, in that weekly status meeting, he's coming back and telling me what the status of the project is. So now 3 months have passed. We didn't have a feedback loop except this status. This is the only feedback loop we have. So what's the status now? Are we going to be ready for launch? We're really close to launch. Are we going to be ready?
Yes, we are.
No, you have to ask them.
That's the real way. Ready for launch?
Well, we haven't done any of the actual the testing's not really complete yet, but it works on my machine. So yes.
So you should come back and tell me, yes, I think we're ready for lunch.
I think we are.
Okay, so now you have to tell the truth that when you're not ready. Okay, so are we ready for lunch? It's time to lunch. Are we ready?
Are we ready for lunch?
No, we're not ready for lunch. I'm going to need another 12 months to make sure.
So what generally happens here is that this guy will say, he will say the reality. This guy will kind of fib a little bit, and this guy will give some business speak, okay? And then I'm complaining because I don't have a feedback loop. So what's happening here is that
guys, sorry, here's one thing, a concept I really like in Agile is time boxing. And unfortunately we have to time box, otherwise everything's going to run late and then we have to switch over. So,
but we started late. That wasn't our fault.
but then the next one will start late, so we're either going to wrap up now.
Ask the program manager.
Okay, so we'll stop now. Thanks, guys. If you have any other questions, just let me know.